Then
There
the
are,
then you're talking about the idea of what we talked about last night, the Brahmacharya, which is the Hindu way of saying that, but the semen retention, the going 90 days, 180 days, 360 days, whatever it is, and then using that energy to spur whatever energetic work you want to do.
so now we're getting into it. Well, there's two different paths that we're talking about here. And yes, the first one is to get rid of the energy and they're not paying attention to it. Now, if we're going to use that energy, if we're going to make use of that energy, we're going to do something constructive with it.
Right.
I do this, I feel great. I don't go burn off that energy. I go back and I do the secret captain, whatever decoder ring society meeting again, and I come out, I feel better. And I don't go burn the energy off again. I go do that captain secret decoder ring meeting again, and I feel really good this time. And finally, something clicks in my poor little pea brain that says, hey, don't run over and burn off that energy. Make use of that energy. And somebody at some point in time clued into this and said, oh, I can keep building this energy up if I don't go release it, literally. And they discovered over a period of time, and this is actually known to the ancients and the mystics from years and years back, there's several different paths of this energy through our body. From an acupuncture point of view, you look at the meridians and you balance out the meridians with the needles, and that's, that balancing of the energy keeps you healthy. And from a mystic point of view, from the Western esoteric traditions, they look at energy a little bit differently. It's a lot more subtle. And they feel the energy moving up and down inside them. And they eventually want to circulate some of this energy. Some of it circulates a whole lot easier than others. Let's go with that. And then that's their focus. They're going to do whatever they're going to do and circulate that energy. Martial artists are going to move that energy and allow that energy to come through their limbs so that, for instance, if I bring my energy up to my hands, and yes, I can do this, I can smack somebody upside the head really hard.
That's a jing.
Through what's called jing, expressed energy. The chi being the overall energy descriptor, jing being the two different sides of that energy. Qing being a yin expression of bringing and retaining that energy, jing being an expressive energy of outgoing energy, and it's just circular. It circulates out, comes back in, or whatever. And the difference, I'm glossing over probably another archive of books and traditions here, but the quick version of this is, it's an expressive energy or it's a retentive energy. You're bringing energy in, you're expressing energy out. You're bringing energy up, you're letting it relax and drop back down, or you're circulating it. You're doing so. You're breathing. You're breathing. We're not a battery. We're a capacitor. We bring energy in, we let it go. We bring energy in, we let it go. Okay. The people that bring it in and I want to be super powerful and I want to bring all this energy in and retain it. Over a long period of time, that's not good, with the exception of what you just talked about, which is the 90-day exercise, or some people call it the 100-day exercise. There are some extreme traditions that go the full year, but I'm not going to go too far into that. But the 90-day exercise, you don't release the energy. You draw the energy in. This can be going from sitting under a tree and just absorbing energy of nature and letting nature come to you. It doesn't have to be any kind of sex magic. I don't know it doesn't have to go that far. It can, that you retain that energy and you don't have intercourse for 90 days. But the energy retention is the important part. the mechanism of what that energy retention is may be important, but not as important. It's the important part is the retention of that energy. 90 days, you do your meditation, you let that energy flow. Then at night, after 90 days, 100 days, you find a safe, under an instructor's tutelage, safe way to release that energy. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
There seems to be this middle path of the tantric idea where you are having sex, but you're not expelling the energy. You're retaining the energy ultimately. And so you sort of get a little bit of both worlds with that as an idea, whether it's yoga or martial arts or meditation or whatever else gets you there.
Tantric is a very ethically challenging subject. Let's go with
challenging. Interesting. Okay.
So within the ethical piece of this, what you're talking about with tantric practice is having sex with a partner and not releasing physically. Mm-hmm. So you stop just short of, let's go with orgasm. You stop short. And it's the same retention that we were alluding to earlier with sexual retention, right? Not releasing it, not finding some girl on the east side. Tantric takes it to almost that to the same point of not releasing, but takes it to a very interesting place where you are withholding from your partner a portion of you. If your partner is well aware of that and understands exactly what's going on, that's probably ethically fine. If you're not telling your partner that, that's probably a problem. Then you have with the tantric yoga or tantric systems, we're talking about more the Eastern philosophies here, not so much in the Western traditions. That you move the energy while you're having intercourse, and the intercourse itself is a duality into a singular, right? You've got male, female, and it connects into a singular entity-ish. That also allows a certain orbit to happen that can't happen a different way. It's a very powerful thing to do. You got a history full of adepts, magi over the years that were well versed in this. I think some took it probably a little too far. You get too far into it and you start letting your ethical barriers and your morality break down, and you start getting into orgy or orgic conditions.
Orgiastic, yes.
Orgiastic, thank you. The orgiastic conditions. Now, this was looked upon in the old Roman times as the Bacchanal or Bacchus celebrations, okay? But when we look at history in depth, that system of morality that the Romans employed while the Bacchanal parties were going on, they looked down upon that. They thought that was a bad thing. Yes. They decided that was not the right thing to do and kind of said, no, don't be doing that. And actually, most historians really look at the Bacchanal orgiastic parties as part of the decline of the empire. And really what, I can't say pushed the empire, but was a part of the slide of the Roman Empire. So there's a lot of history there that I'm glossing over, and there's a lot of fine points that I'm kind of plowing through like a bulldozer. But to answer your question, does it exist? Yes. Is it powerful? Apparently so, because a lot of people did it and still do it. Is it something that we can engage in morally? As long as your partner's aware of it and aware of every piece of it, then I don't see that there's probably much problem with it. Do you want to do that? Here's where it kind of gets funny. You kind of want to have somebody that knows what they're doing to bounce that off of, make sure you're not doing something wrong. How are you going to go to your moral mentor and go, hey, I was having intercourse with my partner the other night and this happened? I'm not sure that's a conversation I want to have, you know? And I'm pretty sure I don't want to have that conversation with any students that I might take on, you know? So yeah, where's the line drawn? Sorry, go ahead.
Dave, I'm going to try to resist my next batch of questions because I know you have something you want to. I wanted to take it down into the Aleutian mysteries because that seems to be a natural segue for this. But if you want to take it back to the other thing, we can.
Well, I was going to just mention, I feel like with the journey of the spiritual or your spiritual journey, your path of enlightenment, I feel you're always going to have these forces of kind of darkness, these moral issues that you have to contemplate. And I think individuals need to realize that there's always going to be these landmines you need to avoid. I think there's going to be a lot of times where you're coming across things that are temptations, there's fears, there's other things that are going to present themselves. And like Randy was alluding to, I feel like you need to make sure you're avoiding those in an effort to continue on that spiritual path and journey. And one thing I did want to ask, and if you wanted to get into your topic instead, that's no problem. But I was actually going to say, how can we apply the ancient wisdom to modern life and how that's applicable to our spiritual journeys now?
Go right ahead, Randy, if you'd like to answer that.
Let me have you restate the question in a different way to make sure I understand.
Mm-hmm. So how do we take these? So we talked a lot about everything from Bacchanalias all the way through to Egyptian institutions, other stuff, newer institutions, newer esoteric bodies, all this stuff, martial arts and stuff. How do you take the cross section of this stuff and apply it to our modern times, to our modern concerns, right? Because these are old modalities, right? Based on very different cultures, very different societies. How does the audience take it and apply it directly to their spiritual journey to help them attain whatever enlightenment may be awaiting them?
My answer would be to study the allegories and study the symbolism behind the allegories. And when you talk about a peculiar system of morality veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols, which was a quote about Freemasonry, all right? It doesn't necessarily have to be Freemasonry. It can be any of the systems or any of the schools of thought or organizations that bring light to the people, okay? Any kind of an enlightenment type structure. This could be a church. It could be anything. When we look at the allegory and the symbol, we see beyond just, hey, this person, did bad things. Don't do those bad things. We look at the intent behind it. We look at what that means to us. We do a comparative. The easy version of that is compare and contrast to what our own situations are. But the deeper version of that is what motivates that thought, what motivates that piece. We often deal with darkness. We often deal with bad situations. The situation can be as negative as my life is in ruins, or it can be as fleeting as I've got a flat tire. Well, the flat tire is going to get fixed. you got somebody who's saying, hey, my whole life is in ruins. That's probably a little bit more to go into depth with. And how do we deal with the allegory? Well, all of these allegories show the means of going deep and coming back out in a good manner. Dante's Inferno literally goes through hell to come back out a changed person, a better person for it. The darkness is, in many cases, the darkness is a negative reflection upon a situation that we're currently dealing with. I have an overgrown lawn because I have it is actually a true story right now. I have a leak in one of my pumps on my mower. This is a dark time for me. I've got an overgrown lawn. No, it's not. It's a fleeting moment, but it's an obstacle over which I need to come. And it's a dark spot in my own mind only because I'm trying to focus on keeping a nice lawn, a nice looking place, right? So what if I go deeper and say, does it look okay even though it's not mowed? Well, the answer is yeah. It doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look as nice as it could, but it doesn't look terrible. Suddenly it changes. So the symbolism of a nice looking lawn, or the symbolism of me expressing a nice lawn, suddenly comes back to my own ego wanting to present a nice looking lawn. Then I will. I'll go get the mower fixed. I'll go mow. I'll go take care of this. But the darkness of, hey, this thing's broken down, suddenly becomes, yeah, it's broken down. I'll take care of it. And, 2 weeks from now, nobody will even know that it was ever broken down. When we look at allegory, we can take those same symbols of deep, dark despair and change them. And we can look at things in a different perspective. So symbols can give us a different perspective on the negative aspects of our lives. They can give us different aspects of the positive too. But we were focused on how do we use this to be better. And Dante's Inferno is a very classic example of looking within, finding the symbolic means of overcoming that piece, and then finding a way to express that in a manner, bring it back up, right? Finding a way to express that in a manner that says, hey, I'm better because of this. This situation sucked. I'm not in a good place right now. Well, what's the perspective? How do we find that in a different way? Did you watch the Paralympics? How cool was that people with no arms were able to swim and swim so well? People with serious disabilities were able to excel. They run faster than I do. Okay, I got a little bit of weight on me, so I'm not running real fast right now. But the point is that even without, they're running faster than I do. How cool is that?
Incredibly cool.
And the focus on how we approach the depth of gratitude, return to gratitude, when we focus on the virtues, when we focus on the pieces that are going to get us through, first thing that comes to mind is fortitude. Fortitude allows us the opportunity to not only push, but to be the rock for somebody else. Now, how many, let's say, I had a situation in one of my organizations in a lodge that consisted of a person being disruptive in a very sensitive time. They were being disruptive in a pretty poor manner. It was my own fault for not dealing with the situation much earlier in my term, but I let it go because this person, he's been around a long time. He's got a lot of accolades. He wears lots of pins on his lapel. He's got lots of honors in his past, whatever. So, he's still breaking all of the social norms and codes and strictures that we have because he's being disruptive during the ceremony, the service, or the lodge, or whatever you want to call it.
Meeting. Yeah.
It's a tough time to get past that. And the dark place is, oh my gosh, I got to deal with that. But the reality is I'm dealing with that so that my senior warden or first vice president or whoever's sitting in the West or the next person down or next person who's going to come into office doesn't have to deal with it. Right. And I found out later they were deeply appreciative that I took care of that instead of just letting it pass and going, whatever. Grumble, grumble, grumble. It's a terrible year. This guy shouldn't have been doing that. He's mean, evil, nasty, whatever. No, because the actions taken, the Machiavellian actions taken, maybe that wasn't the best way of dealing with it, but it worked, and it worked well. Now that person no longer the next person behind doesn't have to deal with that. And the person behind now has a framework and, has past experience to draw upon. So, it kind of sucked for me.
You bring up a great point, dude, because and Dave brought this up originally with the idea of evil creeping in. I just received a letter, part of which I'm going to read at the meeting tonight for Royal Arch, that my mentor in Masonry has now left the fraternity completely.
Wow.
He didn't specify as to why. There was a lot of things, Masonic charges and other stuff like that. Regardless, not going to mention who it is, obviously, for privacy's sake and everything, but he was a titan in Masonry and during his time. And what he did really, really well. He redesigned ideas. He was a process guy, a logistics guy, a way of administering things, thinking about big vision things, huge, awesome. Taught me a ton. And then when he went bad, he went really bad. And he let the bitterness consume him. He let a lot of things happen to him that caused him to do things that, in my mind, didn't make him the guy that he was anymore. He was a different person. And part of that was using, certain Machiavellian things and other things like that, like you started to mention. So, the question is, you use this because it's good today. Right. So what you used got rid of this particular guy's issues or whatever it was. Now, how does that blow back on you potentially as karmic action, let's say, for the future, that if you don't watch yourself could start to cause some of that embitterness in you, right, in the future or other things like that. So there's always that other piece to it of like, this is expedient today, worked great, no problems, but over time, what does that do, right? So that's my thought. And if we were to do a guided meditation, how much time do you think we'd need just so we can block it out? Because we have about another half hour or so.
I could do one in 20 minutes or so. I can do it.
Okay. Totally.
So Alex, to your point, that brings up a great thing for the listeners, I think, because not only is it mindfulness, but I think navigating your spiritual journey and those challenges you're facing, as Randy was alluding to, gratitude, positive thinking, overcoming your ego, embracing humility. I think those are truly the aspects that everybody needs to focus on. And like you said, you can go off the rails really quickly if you allow yourself to. And I think that's really where you have to, those internal forces of, the temptation or the doubt, you really need to make sure you're mindful and cognizant of that. And then obviously if there's outside influences, energetically or people or whatever else situations, you need to not get discouraged. And I like to kind of look at things from a 10,000 foot approach, in a sense, like go back and say, if you take yourself out of the equation, what would be the best course of action here? And obviously you can follow your intuition and everything else, but just wanted to make that point.
You brothers both have really good insight into dealing with geniuses at a lot of different levels in the lodge. And maybe I'm not using geniuses the way that it's intended. And when you have dealt with those situations, well, Dave, you just said that you look at things from the 10,000 foot view. Alex, I'm asking you guys the questions now.
Sure.
What's your approach to that when you have to deal with a problematic individual or a situation that's not quite so clear cut?
Well, yeah. So this week on Confessionals, I sometimes, and it was part of what my mentor taught me in certain ways of dealing in Masonry, which was almost like a mob-like approach, which I fight against, and also try to mitigate and turn into my own flavor of dealing with things, which are, he not only him, but other people, and let's quote Machiavelli rather than anyone else in particular. It's kind of like, if you're going to get a guy out, you got to kill him off. You can't just wing him and wound him and have him stick around, because then he'll come back twice at you later on. So if you're going to get him, it's got to be done. And other things like that. I'm not saying that anybody did that to anybody in Masonry, but in any organization, if you're establishing leadership, if you're establishing hierarchy, certain cults of personality starts to emerge, other things like that. So how you deal with it is very particular. I'm going to say in my lawyerly way that it depends on how you deal with it, because it's really a moment by moment thing. If it's a guy who's very blustery, who's out there, he's throwing his personality around, there's ways of dealing with that. I think with kindness. Oftentimes, a lot of that comes from insecurity. Another way to approach it would be to embarrass them publicly. That would be that they usually can't handle that kind of thing and end up going off different ways. If a guy's more of a, let's call it snake in the grass or whatever it is, where he sort of slithers behind the scenes, quote unquote, then you deal with that in hopefully in different ways, usually exposing, the general idea is exposing as many bad actions to the light as possible, being as transparent as possible, trying to infuse that, since we're in a brotherhood, with love when possible, because ideally you hope that whatever the bad action is, that this guy ends up learning a lesson, which is why I'm very upset about this particular gentleman leaving the fraternity, because in essence, he's now drawn a line and said, there's no coming back. He's decided that, right? So on a certain level, but he or she, I should say. We don't know who it is. But it's just an incredible thing to say, here it is. It's almost like a parent dying in a certain way, or a brother dying. He's not dead, but he's gone. And you'll never see him in this paradigm again. And then that is, for me, kind of unfortunate. But yeah, in dealing with them, I would say you would just add that light filled approach, try to open up the behavior to the light. So that's what I would say with that.
But I also feel that when you're in a position of leadership, especially, you need to take an altruistic approach. You're there to serve others. You're there for the benefit and for the well-being of the world. And I feel like too many individuals self-aggrandize and the ego gets into play where you feel important. You feel like you have this power, like, oh, I'm the spotlight, I'm the center of attention. I think it's really important to look at things from a leadership perspective and say, I'm here to serve others. I'm here for that reintegration, your spiritual journey. Part of that is really identifying your flaws and identifying how you could handle situations and circumstances better. And especially when you deal with individuals, whether it's at work, whether it's in the initiatic order, or whatever else, it's all relationships at the end of the day. And you need to cultivate that relationship. And, sometimes obviously people have their paths and they're going to take whatever path they want to be on. A lot of times, I'm sure everybody could relate to this. You give your friend or whoever advice and they just go against completely what you said. And they're just like, hey, I'm going to do this, and mistakes are made and lessons, need to be learned. And obviously a lot of times that lesson needs to be learned through the hard truths and the realities of life. But
so true.
I think
Dave never listens to me, Randy. Never listens.
True story, but we're all hard-headed, and I certainly listen when I feel is the right thing to do. But I think ultimately, Randy, what you were asking and such, being in a position of leadership, you're going to come across all different situations. There's so many different ways of handling things. And I think ultimately, as long as you're doing your best and you're trying to, what I always try to do is just look at it from a perspective, what's in the best interest of everybody else, not just myself. And if that best interest ends up being something that I'm against, if that's better for the collective and better for everybody else, then, fine. And if that means walking away and just saying, hey, listen, we don't agree, but we can agree to disagree, or, maybe stepping aside is the best course of action, then you do that. But I think altruism comes into that. And, we need to make sure, from a karmic retribution and that perspective, never wish bad upon anybody.
Nope.
You just always want to wish the individual the best, whether man, female, whatever else. You don't want to wish anybody bad, because that'll come back to you 10 times over. So you're much better off just saying, you know what, let's take the high road. I wish you the best. You got to come from a perspective of love and compassion. And I think that's really where your inner peace, and you can cultivate that from your, discussions and your spiritual pathway, I'm trying to say, with those practical insights.
One of the things that both of you brought up, and something that I had kind of come to me a little bit, and I really appreciate what you said from my questioning you guys, is that the transparency of the situation is important. The facts of the situation is part of the transparency piece, and that ego tends to get in the way of most of these situations in some form or another, whether it be our own defensive ego or a cynical ego. Why do I have to be the one to take care of this? Or something like that is coming into play, either especially with ourselves, but with the situation at hand. Somebody has taken a stand that they want to, what's the term, die on that hill. They're going to stand there and they're going to focus on everything. And what you said, both of you, to some extent or another, was moderation. And I agree with that. And I'm very happy to hear that. One of the other things that comes to mind, and this just kind of came to me as we were talk about the shadow talking to me, is a term called ambiguous loss. And a brother from Texas who has become a friend has turned me on to this ambiguous loss concept from the happy hour calls that I'm on. And this ambiguous loss, the concept is that there's a loss. So you've lost something or someone or something that's not so tangible. If you go to a funeral, that's a real loss. That person is lost there. An ambiguous loss would be something like regret or remorse or something that maybe not quite so easily explained as such when we step down from a position of power in the East. Okay, from a president of a club, or if we return to the ranks of the members, right? We're not in that place anymore. Alex gets to sit in the chaplain's position, right? And I'm in the same boat. I'm looking at this going, okay, now what?
Great question.
Sorry?
It's a great question because you know what? Masonry has an answer for that, and it's maybe not the best one. And it's, well, hop on another line. Get on that
That's
other
right.
That's
right.
Go for another ride. Just do it, man. It'll be forever until you have your last Masonic buffet and you're eating down that whatever it is. And, it just is what it is. But there are multiple ways to go about it. You can hop on the ride again if you want.
Ambiguous loss is something that we don't teach in any of these traditions, and we should. We should take a look at this and say, how you deal with transition, upward, downward, sideways, how you deal with transition is as important as the transition itself. And the concept of ambiguous loss is not lost on me. We deal with it in, I refer to Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey.
Sure.
Okay. The hero at the end of the journey is returned to the place where he was, but changed, but nothing around him's changed. Now he's not as able to connect because he's got experiences that the rest of the, let's call it, village doesn't have. Return of the Jedi, we got Skywalker returning to Tatooine, and he's not the same Skywalker that left Tatooine.
No.
So nobody on that planet can relate to that. But of course, everybody he knew on the planet was killed, right? But nobody on that planet would relate to him, or he can't relate to them in the same manner that he was when he was just plain old Luke Skywalker dreaming about becoming a pilot for the Empire. That was many adventures before. The concept exists within Freemasonry, or any initiatic order, because you go through the initiation, you're changed. Now you can't go back out to Joe, Fred, Jim, Bob in public and say, hey, we relate to the same things because, no, you didn't go through that initiation, did you? Okay, we can't relate to that part. So there is an ambiguous loss. It's like a bit of sadness that, hey, I'd really like everybody to feel what I'm feeling. Now, that can't happen. We take it to the next level. We three take it to the next level because we have the same shared experience of having to deal with geniuses while we were in the East. Now, you guys had it a little bit worse than I did, or a whole lot worse than I did. And I really appreciate some of our private conversations on how you've dealt with that is admirable. And for the folks watching this podcast later on, they really did do a good job of that. But the pieces that we need to focus and explain to other people are, you're going to feel these feelings, and it's not a bad thing. Again, it's something that you need to deal with. Find a way to deal with. Some people do go straight into another line, go find another lodge to be a part of, or another organization to be a part of, and climb the officer line, and maybe go to the state level or the national level in some of these organizations. Oh, more power to you. I'll support you guys all day long in doing that, but I don't have the aspiration to do that much state level work or national level work. I'll go to the conventions and support you all day long. But being a grand level officer, that's too that chain's too heavy. The collar's too heavy, weighs down on the shoulders too much, chokes off all the oxygen to my brain.
That's how you end up one of those geniuses.
That's funny. That's funny. But
I don't mean that any particular grand body in particular.
No.
Yes, that's great, man. So we got about 10 minutes left. Do you think maybe we could do a quick meditation, maybe like a 5-minute one or something like that, if you got one handy?
There are some reflective exercises that we can't do a full meditation because that would be enough time that would be tough to get into. What I can do is a couple of different, what I call quick techniques, or things that I've used in the Kung Fu and the Qigong and some of the other disciplines that I've practiced over the years. And I'll share them with you. Happy to work with you on them. The first part is, if you're driving or operating heavy equipment at this point in time, hit the button. Do not listen to this part going on, because it can take you into a trance state, altered state of consciousness, whatever you want to call it, but it can interfere with operating equipment or machinery. So let's be safe out there, folks. That's very important. So I'm going to approach this as I would with beginners. So guys, don't throw tomatoes at me too quickly, because I'm going to really kind of start at a very, very low baseline here. There's people with no practical experience at all with any kind of meditation or contemplative practice. The reason I'm doing this is because this podcast is open to everybody, and it's beautiful and it's awesome. And this is something that I hope a lot of people can use. And now, for everybody on the podcast, Alex and David are no slackers when it comes to this stuff. So you can go hit them up too. Feel free to hit me up, but you can hit them up too. They know their stuff when it comes to this. They're being very kind when they ask me to do this.
And that's just you being super humble, which is one of your greatest talents. But thank you.
Humility. Embrace it.
Exactly. So what we do is look at the area around us, okay? One of the things that I like to do is just sit and look around and think about the space that I'm in, all right? So this is kind of creating a sacred space in its own way. There's many different ways of doing this, but if you will sit and just contemplate the sacred space. What is this space that I'm sitting in? Why is it sacred? If I go out into a park, a public park, and I sit in the trees, and I just think about, how old are these trees? What have they seen? How cool is it to be in this park? And they absorb the energy of just being in the park, and the sunlight, and the breathing the air, and just be in the moment, a mindfulness moment, right?
Sure.
So if we just sit there and do this for a moment, we just kind of kick back, look at the room that you're in. Maybe there's a humidor nearby, right, Dave? Maybe there's some books that are nearby. Okay, maybe there's something that is special to you, that somebody's given to you, that's nearby. And we just think about how special that room is, how cool it is to be and exist in that space, in that room. As we do that, we look around and we see how beautiful this part of creation is, whether we're in a park or in a house or in even an office building. An architect spent a lot of time making all of those corners be corners. And we don't think about the beauty of an office building. Oftentimes we're looking at the carpet, but the reality is somebody made that space and made it sturdy and protective of us. And maybe that's something to be appreciative of. And we can turn to gratitude at that point and be thankful for that space. And just look around and how cool is it that we're in this space, thinking about this space, being grateful for this space. Then we can turn around and take it even a step deeper and just think about any of the virtues that come to mind. We talked about fortitude earlier. Temperance is another good one. Temperance is not necessarily holding your tongue or not saying something or not doing something that you want to do. Maybe that's the negative aspect of temperance, but when you are forging a knife or forging a sword, doing metal work, to temper that metal is to make it stronger. So temperance, you can become stronger in your own space here. And just enjoy that. And when you're ready, you can maybe say a little prayer in your own way and be thankful to deity for doing that or for allowing you to be in that position at that time. Invite him to walk with you, invite him, her, whatever your deity is expressed as, to ask the divine to be with you and to walk with you. And then you just simply say thank you and think about releasing the space that you just created back to being its own space. It's still special to you. That never went away. But you can just kind of return and say, hey, library, I appreciate you being a library, and I'm going to go on the rest of my day now, whatever it is. Hey, office space. Time for the boss to walk back through, so maybe we get back to work or something. But that just gives us an opportunity to sit and enjoy and be mindful in our own space, in our own way.
That's beautiful.
One more before we leave, before we transition into closing down here. I like to do 4 breaths. It's 3. Then there's a couple of things to breathing. 3 deep breaths will release tension in your body if you let it, if you practice the way that I'm about to work with you on. I like to do 4 because I always use 1 as a practice breath. 3 is fine. So just remember 3 breaths, 3 deep breaths. But the first one for me is to kind of clear everything out so that I can really focus on that first breath too. It's unnecessary. 3 breaths is fine. But the first breath in, I just let everything kind of drop. That never works. The first breath in, I try to get rid of everything. It never all goes away. The second breath, though, I really breathe in. I've taken that first breath. I got rid of some of the junk, but now I'm going to let all of the tension, all of the day's problems, all of everything just flow. And like my feet were valves, right, that I could open and drain. Just let all that negativity just pour out my feet and into the ground. Now, the third breath, I'm going to breathe in, and I'm going to concentrate on breathing in all of the good, all of everything good that I possibly can, and then let it go. And let it wash all the last remaining pieces of the day away. So let's practice that. Let's do that. Let's take one breath for just a moment and try to get yourself centered. All right. One, let it out, let it all go. All right. We're going to start with the first breath. First breath in, let it all out, and let it all just go. But you can feel that there's a little bit not quite gone yet. So we're going to take that second breath. Now relax your forehead, soften your eyes, soften the ears, just let it all drop and go out. Now one last time, deep breath in. And look how good that is. Most of that's all gone. Last time out, letting it all drop away. I can visibly see the lines on your forehead disappear when you do that. How cool is that? How cool. 3 breaths. Now, I call it 4, but 3 breaths will do wonders. If you just do that 2-3 times a day, get into that relaxed, that feeling that you got right now, that you got that relaxed, hey, this is pretty cool. My shoulders don't feel, don't sit up like I'm wearing them like earrings anymore, right? And you get that feeling there, and you start to kind of live the third piece that I would talk about. We're already out of time, I know, but the third piece that I would talk about is living in the back body, right? If you look out your eyes and you look at the room around you right now, you look at the computer that we're sitting in front of, you hardly notice the lines of your nose and the peripheral parts of your eyes and your eye sockets. But if you just allow yourself to say, oh, I can kind of see my nose there too. My eyes aren't just focused on the computer. I can see peripherally around them too. Then you think, wait, my eyes, the surface of the eyes are here, but the nerves that are actually seeing stuff are way back here in the back part of my head. So you're looking basically through a really long set of tunnels that then look out and around. So you're actually focused on the back part of your head. No, if it's the back part of the head that we're seeing out of, not the first part, the front part, maybe it's the back part of our spine that's holding up our head. Maybe it's our spine itself that's holding up our body. And we start moving our consciousness back to kind of thinking about that back part of our body and not the front part. And if you'll do this exercise, I think you'll see an interesting change. Think about living in the back part of your head, not in the front. Because everything in the front is just right here, right here, right here, right here, right here. But if you go to the back, oh, you got filters. Now everything out there is a little more distanced. And you can do things like consider playing chess, not checkers. You're not jumping at everything. You're living in the back part of your head. You're watching the world go by from the back part. You're living in the back part of your body. And when you walk, you feel the spine into the hips and your heels as they strike the ground. Now you're feeling the back part of the legs, not walking with the front part of the legs. And now that is a type of mindfulness exercise that you're being mindful of where you are in the body and what part of your body you're using or activating or walking with. And that's a really cool thing to do. You're thinking about your own body in a different way. It's a really cool exercise to do that because it'll help give you a focus to stay in that mindful moment for a longer period of time. So those are 3 different methods that I personally like to use when I don't have a whole lot of time to go into a whole meditative spot. Sometimes I'll just sit and listen. There's fourth type. Sometimes I'll just sit very quietly, maybe do the 3 breaths beforehand, but sit very quietly and just listen. Just listen. Thoughts will come, thoughts will go. Just return back to focus and just listen.
Wow.
So
now, what type
Truly
of incense
profound.
would you use if you're going to burn incense? Because I saw Dave burning some incense over there. What type of incense would you use that you like in particular, that you think might spur that, connection a little bit better? Or music, or whatever else, other modalities that you might want?
Okay, we'll start with incense first, music second. Incense is a complex subject for me. Very briefly, a long time I wrote a little paper on this, not much of one. Harvard School of Medicine actually posted this out. School of Medicine, or was it their archaeological? Shoot, I don't remember. Go look up Harvard. Go look up frankincense. But it turns out that frankincense has a antibiotic property to it. In natural settings, burning frankincense can kill up to 80% of the nasty bacteria that might be in the air. Antimicrobial aspect. So hey, there was a health benefit to burning this incense too. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Now, frankincense has a very, very tiny psychotropic factor. Okay, very tiny. It's not going to make you high. However, it has the ability to assist in a very, very gentle way, assist going to that transitional state of mind, to that trance-like space or altered state of consciousness. Many different ways of explaining the same thing, but that space in between consciousness and sleep. Okay, that's what we're trying to do, is get to that space so that we can kind of tune into the world around us and listen to the mystic voices or whatever, listen to your shadow, listen to your intuition. Your intuition really talks a whole lot more to you than you ever know. Well, it talks to me a whole lot, and I would love to listen in a lot more than what I do. And the frankincense is one of the ways to do that. Myrrh helps a little bit. So I like frankincense and myrrh, not just two of the gifts of the Magi, but for good reason. They do have a very minute psychotropic assist when it comes there, and antimicrobial factor. So hey, be healthy, burn incense. For just pure smell, because I like it. I like dragon's blood a little bit. It comes in little, it looks kind of reddish, powdery rock form. You crush it up and add it to the other. There's who is the incense maker? I will post it so you can put it on your Fred Soul. Took me a second. There's my intuition kicking in. SOLL, Fred Soul. SOLL. He's an incense maker out of New Mexico, Arizona, Southwest area. Phenomenal stuff. His stick incense is pure and it's fantastic. I also order in pure incense in rock and powder form and crush it all up together. Frankincense, myrrh, dragon's blood, copal, COPAL, copal. That's a fragrance you're going to smell a whole lot in Catholic Church, and the censers that they swing back and forth with the incense as they're walking up the aisles and stuff. Copal is there's several different varieties. I think the Mayan copal is maybe a little bit better than some of the others for me. That's my personal preference. I'll crush up a little bit of that in there. So that tends to be my personal blend. And I can't say that it's one part. Honestly, it's, if I have it on hand and I only have a little bit of one of the others, I'll probably just throw it in there. Not an exact science as to what that is. Now that's with the powdered incense. I'll use the little charcoal briquettes, put the powdered incense on there, and let that go.
Mhm.
With the stick incense, Fred Soul is by far my favorite incense maker. No, it's not a paid I don't get any kind of recompense for that. I just like his stuff. Then what else? As far as cleansing,
Hearing, right? So white sage or Palo Santo or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mhm.
I use sage a lot. Sage is pretty easy for me to get hold of here, especially in the Midwest.
Sure.
So I can get sage. I can go outside and get sage, dry it out, and then make smudge sticks out of it. Or there's a company that I don't remember which company it was. Fred may have it too. Just white sage in a stick form, which is fantastic. I like carrying the stick form around the house with me a little bit, and just a little bit in every room. Sage can be pretty powerful, pretty rough on the nose.
Yeah.
Pure sage can irritate your nose a little bit. So so I like to kind of spread it around the house, not go crazy with it. But that's my go-tos. But
Love it.
Yeah, I'm burning sage right now.
nice. So what did I miss? What do you guys go with?
No, I was thinking the same. I have some friends who like Nag Champa, which is another. But I think it's a little too woody for me. I also don't like patchouli. There's just something that's like sort of off-putting for me there when it's too dank kind of thing. I like a fresher, nicer, more open smell. Yeah. And as far as, I'll be honest with you, when I smoke a cigar, for me, it's an act of devotion. And I do that. So the smoke coming off of this is just as interesting to me. And when you do it, you have that. It establishes a sacred space when all of us get together. We start talking about esoteric topics over a cigar, something like that. To me, that's an absolute keeping holy company and utilizing sacred space to have that introspection, that investigation of, moving towards that enlightened principle. So for me, that's a big thing.
And I think it's important to point out that a lot of individuals that do smoke, obviously, there's a nicotine aspect of things. We get that, and tobacco, obviously, being addicting to some individuals. But to Randy's point, the breath work, that deep breathing, those techniques, that's really the relaxation that you're getting from smoking. And, I was fortunate to meet Wim Hof a few years back and really get into some deep breath work. I haven't had an opportunity to do his full course or anything, but I met him in passing, and really cool individual. Definitely great to do those deep breathing exercises. In terms of incense, I typically use sage and Palo Santo. I do a lot of cleansing because of being an empath and dealing with the spiritual world more than most individuals, I would say. Just cleansing the day, so to speak. I also like frankincense and myrrh and some others, I'll even get into some lavender scents or things of that nature, just if you want to have more of a floral, just scent in the house, because to Rand point, sage can definitely be a little overwhelming at times, but it's a necessity for me. And, it just makes sure always cleansing the palate, so to speak.
You can add some dragon's blood into the sage.
Absolutely.
I have not tried it, but I understand dragon's blood to be a very good cleansing agent.
Sure.
And even Florida water, from what I understand, if you don't want to go Aqua de Florida and you spray it around, it's remarkably effective, even though it's something you just buy in a store. But that was one of my buddies who's studying to be a shaman down in Peru. He goes, that's like a secret thing they don't really tell you about. Do you think they're making everything from scratch? Yeah, they buy Florida water and they use that a lot. it actually winds up working really well. So it's just what's in it is, now you might want to make your own Florida water without the cologne sort of piece in there that's sort of smelly, and just use the vegetables or the botanicals, so to speak, to do it. But the Florida water you get in the store, great, just works. So on that note, we don't want to keep you too long. I know you have stuff you got to get to, Randy, and we just want to really thank you so much for being coming on the show, doing what we would do anyway if we got together and be talking about all this great stuff.
It is my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Randy, thank you so much. And obviously, if we had these conversations, we'd probably be talking for about 7-10 hours over cigars and drinks. But
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to plug, Randy, before you go? Anything that you got going on these days, or anything in particular?
No, I think that I see the work that you're doing here with the podcast, and I would plug it, because straight up, this is reaching out in a whole different direction. I talked to you a while back about the podcast itself and the various directions you're looking to go, and I was excited then. And I'm even more excited now. Thank you very much for your work, and it's awesome to be here with you. So
appreciate that. Appreciate that, Randy. Have a great day, and
thank you for being a part of it. And God bless America.
God bless. And this has been Brothers of the Arcana. Thank you.
Bless.